All right, we're back. We are COMP123 in the summer 2017 semester, and we are week 13, part one of our broadcast. We're talking about splash forms and other things today. Some announcements for next week and for Thursday. Thursday, we will be having a lab. It will be due on Friday. I know some of you decide not to do labs for whatever reason. I kind of talked about this with the section 1 people, and that's unfortunate. A lot of people don't do them, and they need them. Every 0.5% counts, right? So it just cuts down on your marks. So please if you haven't had a chance to do that kind of stuff, it's kind of a bad habit to get into, not to do your labs. Also good practice for the final. So Thursday, lab 27 will be out. It'll be something to do with what we're doing here today, right? And it'll be due Friday. Okay, so what about the exam? Next week, we're going to have to do a bit of a review on Tuesday. I'm going to go over some stuff that I'm going to be looking for in your exam, and we'll talk about norms and everything else. Again, things to think about is the exam will be on Thursday next week and the regular time slot. I will start promptly. I will not let you come in late, past 15 minutes. So if you're here 15 minutes into the hour, sorry, see you later, right? It means everyone must come on time. Why is that? Not because I want to be bad, but because it's going to disrupt other people, you guys walking in late, all right? And I don't want that to happen. This is final exam. It's with 25% of your final grade. It's important, right? You guys got to be here on time. So that's number 1. 2, it's going to be open book, open internet, open everything. But you need to know your stuff, right? The one thing you cannot do is talk to anybody else, look at anybody else's code, use your cell phone, and please bring your student ID. If you don't have a valid student ID, get it, please. I want it here for next week. I will be checking, right? So that's next week on Thursday, okay? Valid student ID, please have it with you, right? Normal IDs are not valid, okay? Don't give me a driver's license. I want your student ID, all right? So if you don't have that ready to go, then you won't be able to write your exam. Okay, so that's Thursday of next week. Tuesday, we're going to do a bit of a review, like I said. And remember, things on the exam, you're going to be given a template. It's going to cover everything from when Professor Narendra left until everything that we've covered together, right? So things about abstract classes. There'll be some stuff on interfaces. There'll be stuff on web forms or Windows forms, I mean. All the things we've talked about, it'll cover some of those things, right? It will last approximately an hour and a half. I'll make it so it's like time for that, right? So you need to know your stuff. And then you're good to go. It'll be an electronic exam. There won't be any paper involved. And that's about it. I don't think there's anything else I can tell you at this point. Other than that, it'll be purely practical. There will be no multiple choice, true, false, or anything like that. Any questions around the exam? Next week, Thursday, right? Last day of classes here. I won't be teaching past that point. I will have office hours, hold office hours on Tuesday as well as Thursday before the exam. If you want to get together, right? Obviously, after the exam makes no sense. I also will be here this Thursday, if you want to if you have any problems you want to discuss. Thursday after class, I will be available. Those are my office hours for this week and next week. So please book time early because I know people are going to come to me and say, I don't know how to do this. Can you help me out? Will GitHub be on the exam? What do you think? Angela, what do you think? I know she's not listening, but I got to ask. GitHub, is it going to be on the exam? Yes, it will be on the exam, right? People who think they're going to get away without being on the exam, it's going to be on the exam. It's going to be worth four marks. So if you just put it up on GitHub and you don't use GitHub for development for the exam, lose 2 marks automatically, right? And if you don't use GitHub at all, you lose 4 marks automatically. How about comments? Do you think comments are going to be on the exam? Can you have to comment your code? Angela?
Never.
Of course, comments have to be on the exam. It's going to be worth 6 marks. Between GitHub and comments, that's 10 marks, right? That's crazy, right? So don't avoid it. How about structure, like underscores? I know my favorite friend Winston doesn't like underscores. He says, Tom, I'm never going to use. That's it. Now you've been recorded forever on YouTube. They know your name, right? He says, I don't want to use underscores. He says, that's it, right? I love the guy, but you know what? If you don't use underscores, you lose a mark on the exam, right? So that's another one. That's 11 marks if you don't do those things. Hey, how about another one? If you don't structure your application with the right names, like if I ask you to make something, call something like calculator form, and you call it calculator, will you lose a mark? Hell yeah, you will, right? One of the things I saw just feedback on the assignments that I did. Most of the assignments, that's abstract planets, were done very well this time around. Most of you guys like almost perfect, I would say, or perfect. I was pretty easy with them because, again, you guys did what I asked for the most part. Some finicky stuff, like some people didn't put in their student ID. Would you lose a student ID for not putting that in the comments? Yes, you will. If you don't put your comments on every code file, you'll lose marks, right? You need to put comments like I asked you to put comments. If you follow the instructions, you're going to get your marks. If you don't, I can't do anything about it, right? So please look at that instruction sheet that you're going to get for the exam. It's going to look identical to an assignment. If you've done my assignments, the exam will be like an assignment that's in class, all right? So there's nothing to worry about. There's no need to be stressed about it. Okay.
How will you compare it? UI and the other stuff that we need like class.
You'll see, right?
You combine that
somehow. And then so we got that you know, that stuff happening for next week. So I'm just talking about things that didn't go so well. Lab 26, that was the one we did with the user interface. User interfaces were done okay, I guess. For the most part, some people were really lazy. They just put like 4 controls on the user interface and put it up, right? And they said, oh, let's get some marks. I gave them 10 anyway, right? If you did any kind of user interface and put it up, even if it was ugly, right? And you put GitHub, you got 10, right? If you didn't put GitHub, you got 8, right? If your form crashed somehow or didn't work, you lost 2 more marks for 6, right? And that's really what it was all about. It was really, I wanted to just get you started on assignment 5. Remember that assignment 5 is also due when? Next Tuesday. Not Thursday and it's not Friday. It's due next Tuesday. So please don't wait. You got a week left to do assignment 5. It's not a big assignment, but it will bite you because there's some details, as always, that are important for you to get right. All right, so that's it for announcements. Let's get to this this next part. I want to kind of talk about what we did last time. We were working with a project. Now, where do I find my projects on my Windows 10 machine? Some people ask me this question. I got to answer them now. An email, by the way. I don't know where to find my project now. Lost, right? Okay. You go to Documents, right? And under Documents, you'll see Visual Studio 2015. If you're running 2017, you'll see it there as well. Go to 2015. Go to Projects. Under Projects, you look at the last one we looked at, which is 12B2, right? That's the one we were working with last week, right? And I'm going to double-click on the solution file, and it's going to run. Alternatively, you could go to GitHub if you don't have access to your project locally, right? And we've talked about this before. There's a couple ways to do that. If I go to GitHub, in my case, I have it on Centennial. There's a few ways to grab stuff from GitHub. Right, let's talk about this really quickly. Here's 12B2. A couple things I can do here. I can clone or download, right? I can download, right? Oh, by the way, one more thing. If you give me a RAR file, you lose a mark. If your application doesn't work, you lose a couple marks, right? If you give me a .7z, you'll lose a mark. I want zip. Please understand that. Anything you make my life more difficult, right? It just means I have to, it's extra time for me to mark everything for everybody, right? So please make my life easy and do what I ask you to do. Zip, not 7z, not RAR, okay? Even though 7z is a zip, it's slightly different on the system. All right, so you can download the zip file. You can open in the desktop with your desktop.github.com. If you get the desktop version, it's a UI that you can download from GitHub. Or look at this, how easy it is. Open right in Visual Studio, right? Because it's C#, it'll open right in Visual Studio, and you don't have to download it. You just open it up, and it'll do all the work for you. All right, we don't need to do this, though, because we already have it open. It's right here. And we were working on the calculator last week, so we're just going to continue this thing. So a couple things that to note. We used the Backspace Image as well as the plus-minus image, right? And these are nice, but it may not work on all people's Visual Studios. And the reason for that is because I have a font that works, but the machines in front of you may not, right? So you may get some really weird empty block that kind of comes in there, right? And of course, to mitigate that, so the backspace, the plus minus, and the divide sign, you can actually create or download an image for those things and use it as a back button image, so that way you can have these special buttons. For the most part, though, it's mostly available if you use your character map like we showed you last week. Okay, so now we've done some stuff. You know what? My calculator is kind of boring. I want to add a splash form. Splash form, right? So when this is how I want it to work. As a user, I want the splash form to come up, right? Give me a welcome message and then go away after 3 seconds. All right? And then my calculator interface is going to come up. That's what I want. Okay. How do I add another form to my project? How do I do that? How do I add another form to my project? Yeah, you don't know? Okay, let's try it. So I'm going to go to, right-click, add form. Right-click. I'm going to go add. Now, if you've already added a form, it'll come up here under Windows Forms. But if you haven't added it in, you have to go to New Item. This is the quick hit area, this little menu. If I go to New Item, it'll come up. And then under New Item, you can see that I can look for Form, right? And then there's Windows Form. Now, I'm not going to press OK here or Add. I want to change the name of the form right here with SplashForm. Notice I'm not calling it Splash Screen, although that's kind of what it is, right? It's called SplashForm. That's what I called it right here. There it is. And I'm clicking Add. Now, this adds another whole form onto my application. And just like we did before, I'm going to go in to get some comments, right? Some default comments here. I'm going to grab this thing right here, comments. Oops. Copy. I'm going to go into my splash form, right? And notice I can also go right-click and go to F7, right? And put in some comments in my splash form because I want your comment on every form at least, right? So today is August the 8th, right? And this is the splash form class. That's what it is, right? And created the splash form. So that's number one, splash with an L. And this is a great place to do a little commit, right? So added splash form. I didn't do so many commits when I was demoing earlier, but I'm going to do more now. Add a splash form, right? Commit all. Okay, good. So I've done this commit. I've got this empty splash form, and we want to make it look like the other one, right? So my other one is kind of dark, kind of gray. This one is this color, and also it doesn't look like a splash form. It just looks like a regular form. Well, I want to make it the same size as this, 320 by 480, as well as make it open in the middle. Some people, if you lost marks for your UI because you put it off to start over here on the side, I never start my UIs on the side. I always ask you, put it in the middle, right? So if you lost marks for that, there's a reason for it. It's because you should do the few steps that I talked about with Tom, which is, put up the properties window here, which is make sure you follow the simple stuff that I asked, right? Which, for example, if I click on this form, I want to change the Windows default start position location to center screen, right? That's the first thing I want to do. I want to change the size of my form to 320 by 480, 320 by 480. There we go, right? And now we didn't do this earlier today, but my calculator form has a specific back color, and I want to kind of match it up with what I have here for now, right? And I can do that by going to back color, right? And I believe I went to web, and I went to light gray, right? That's what it looks like. Okay, light gray. Okay, cool. So I've changed that. That's cool. But do I need, on my splash screen, do I need a maximize or minimize button? Do I even need an X? The answer is no. I don't need this. This whole toolbar can go away, right? So how do I get rid of that? That's called the control box. That's new. Here's control box. I can turn that to false. And now all those controls go away. Okay, nothing there. However, I still got a little title bar. Hey, if I want to check this form out, can I just run it like this? Well, no, right? Because when I start my form, then what ends up happening is my other form comes up, but it doesn't show this one, this new one that I made. How do I show my new one? In the program, right? So Solution Explorer. Here's my driver class program. right? Notice that it starts the calculator form first. I don't want to. I want to start the splash form first. So I'm going to go splash form. Cool. Now, of course, we made a change. So 0.2 started splash form first. And we're going to do a commit. I'm on fire today with commits now that I've been reminded. Started, no, splash form. Someone got me angry. Splash form first and program, driver class program, driver class. Okay, good. Commit all. Cool. So we did this piece, right? We did this. Let's test it out. And we should see the splash form, but we got a problem. We still got this title bar. We want to get rid of it. How do I do that? And look, when I do this, if I go to my splash form, here's my design side. And if I go to my properties window, and notice that the title bar is still here. If you see it here, chances are it's going to appear when you run the splash form, right? And the way to take it away is form border style. See where it says sizable? Change sizable to none. And now there's no border at all. Right? Nothing. Okay. Also, we didn't fix this part. Our auto scale mode is font. We want to take that away and make it none, right? To make it more compatible. Cool. I'll save that and press play. And now you have this. But it just sits there. And it'll sit there forever. How do I close my application? The only way I can do that now is press the stop button up here, right? Or Control-Alt-Delete, or somehow close this off by hand. But there is no way. There's no X anymore to close it off. So I'm going to stop the application up here. All right, cool. So we've made a container for the splash form, but it doesn't look like much. Okay, so here's what I want to do. Remember I said I want it for it to come up, and then 3 seconds, I want to show my calculator form. Okay. Well, when you hear what I said, in 3 seconds sounds like there's some kind of timing involved. And for this, we can use the timer control. And we can find that in the toolbox. Here we go, is toolbox. And if I search for timer on the toolbox, this is something new for people. Here's my timer control. It looks like a little clock. And this time I'm going to drag and drop it from here onto the form. But instead of appearing visually, this is the one control so far we've used where there's nothing visual appearing on the form. Actually, it's in the gutter over here, right? What this means is that even though it's not physically added to the form as a visual control, it's still a component of the form class, right? And this timer is called timer 1. That's a terrible timer, terrible name. What should I call this timer? How about splash form timer? Splash form timer. Woo, really long. All right, it's by default, the splash form timer is not enabled. If it's not enabled, it's not going to work. So you got to enable it. All right, so by default, you got to go from false to true. Yay, cool. That means it's on now. The next piece you have to do is this one, interval. Interval is in milliseconds. Notice down here it says milliseconds in the bottom left corner of your screen, right? Milliseconds. How many milliseconds are in a second? 1,000, right? So I need 3 seconds. That means I need 3,000 milliseconds to be the interval. So let's change that. 3,000 milliseconds. 3 seconds. Cool. This is when it's going to trigger the tick event, okay? It'll trigger the tick event every 3,000 milliseconds. But we're not really listening for the tick event. Even if it triggers it, who cares? It'll keep triggering it, but we won't listen, which means we need a event handler for the tick event. So I'm going to double click on my splash form timer down here, which creates this, my splash form timer tick event. Cool. So now I'm going to go in here and change this, 0.2. Created splash form timer. Okay, and we'll put that down here. This is the event handler for the tick event. Now, what is a tick? A tick is like this, just like on a clock, where you have the little hand. The big hand tells the time, right? The little hand points to where the what the minutes are, and then there's the second hand. The second hand kind of goes around the clock, as an example, in an analog clock. Every second, it goes kind of by those little ticks that are along the clock's edge, right? If you're using a digital clock, every time the clock changes from one second to the other, that's the tick. It's almost like a beat. If I was going to beat a drum, every time I hit the drum, boom, 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 every second. That's the tick event. It'll keep triggering over and over again. Well, that's not right. I don't want this to keep triggering forever. I want it to only trigger once, which means as soon as the tick event is triggered, I want to turn it off. That means I want to do something like this. SplashForm timer, right? Enabled is equal to false. So as soon as the event is triggered, I want to turn it off. I want to turn the timer off, right? Because otherwise it'll keep triggering over and over again every 3 seconds, right? I don't want that. So this turn timer off, right? Next. In my SplashForm timer, what do I want to really do? I want to show my calculator, right? But my calculator is a form, and my form needs to be created, right? Look what we did in my driver class program here, right? I'm creating a new anonymous object called SplashForm. I need to do something like this, but here somehow. Well, the way to do that, of course, is to make a new object. So just like we learned before, it's going to be called calculator form, right? And we'll use lowercase calculator form is equal to a new calculator form. Hey, does this do it? Does this show my form? No, it does not, right? We have to use the show method. Calculator form dot show. Now there's different ones. There's show dialog, show icon, a bunch of other ones. The one we need to use is show. Show dialog is modal. Show is modeless. So we need to use that one. Talk about what modal is and modeless later. All right, so show. This shows the calculator form. But now, guess what? We have our timer form and our calculator form on top of each other, right? We want to hide this form. So we're going to say this dot hide. Hey, what's the difference between hiding and closing? Because there's also the close method, right? What would the close method do compared to hide? Is that? Exit the program. If we exit the program, can we? No, it would exit the program. Exit the form, it would exit the form. But if we exit the form, and this is the first form, it exits the whole program, right? And if it exits the whole program, we can never see the calculator. That's why we can't close. We have to hide this form and show the calculator form, right? Okay. And this is problems. We're going to run into some problems here, right? So show the calculator form, hide this form, and then we turn the timer off. That's for sure. Okay, let's try this out and see if it works, right? We want to do this after 3 seconds. Let's try it, right? Because we've talked a lot, but who knows? 1, 2, look at the thing. 3, oh, there it is. And the other form is gone. So far, so good. Okay, let's close off our calculator and see if it closes. Oh, man, look what happens. It doesn't close my application anymore. Why? Because my SplashForm is still open, right? It's just hidden. My calculator form is closed, but my SplashForm is hidden in the background, and I can't get to it ever because it's hidden, right? I need to be able to close my application, and I can't do that. Well, how do I do that? Well, first of all, right, I need to go into my calculator form. So here's my design view, right? But if I press F7, I should be able to go into my code behind file, right? Here's my code behind file. So far, my calculator form is pretty empty, right? All right, now I need a new event. I need the event when I click the X, right? Here's my calculator design, right? If I click this X, what I'm really doing is I'm closing my form, right? So I need to listen for the form closing event, right? And I need to do that by clicking on the background of the form, right? Going to my Solution Explorer, going to my properties, and instead of listening for properties. I want to go to event handlers, the little lightning bolt. And notice that there's the load event. The load event is highlighted. That's the default event for the form class. So if I double click on the form, it'll make the load event. I don't need that right now. I need the form, either form closed or form closing. What's the difference? Form closed is when it's closed. Well, guess what? That's too late. It's closed. All right. Form closing is just before it's going to close. It's an event that happens in the application event lifecycle, right? It's just about to close, and then I want something to happen. So I want you to double click on this one, form closing. Cool. There's my form closing. Well, guess what? We just added a new event. This is the an event handler for the form closing. It's actually an event, okay? And of course, I added 0.2, added the form closing event handler. I did. Okay, oops. I did this, save, and of course I'm going to go to team, added form closing event handler to calculator form. It all. There we go. Cool, cool. I got this. It's empty right now. And now my calculator form closing, I want to be able to, when I click the X button, I want it to close the application, right? And how do you think I can do that? What's the way I can do that? I could try and close my form, my splash form, right? I could do that. But if I close my splash form, this one's kind of still open, which could cause an error, actually, right? But the way to do it would be to do application.exit, which actually is a hard exit. It terminates my application. Okay, so application exit stops my application from running. Let's test it, see if it works. So run. It comes up, 1, 2, 3. The new form comes up, and then when I click X, the application exit. Okay. Now, if you just did the splash form and you didn't close it off, if you didn't manage it, and if you tried to get extra bonus marks for assignment 5, you wouldn't have got them all. You need to do all these steps in order for you to get this splash form bonus, right? We're not finished it, of course. My splash form is pretty darn ugly, yeah? Whew. Oh, man, is it ever ugly. It's so bland, right? Well, let's add some other stuff to it. I want to definitely add under my toolbox, let's make it less bland. It's not going to be beautiful, but let's make it less bland. We'll put a label in place here, and we'll call this the welcome label. Here's the welcome label, right? And of course, we're going to make this so it spans the whole time. So we're going to make this a font size of, let's say, 16, width that's bold. And we'll also add some text to it that makes more sense. We'll say, welcome to my awesome calculator. Well, it's pretty long. Can I do this? Well, it's way out here. But labels are really cool. What you can also do is if you click on this little down arrow, it allows me to split my stuff up so I can do one of these, right? Right in here, right inside the text property. So the text property can be pretty long. And I can change my text alignment from top left to center. And that's pretty cool, right? Now if I run it, I should see my message, right? Welcome to my calculator. And then after a few seconds, bam, this comes up, right? I still can't do anything here, right? But I can do this. All right, cool. So I got my welcome to my calculator, but this is pretty boring. How about a picture, right? How about an image? Well, I downloaded an image earlier today. It's kind of a scene of from Google, a little beach scene, right, that I downloaded. If I double click onto it, I'll bring up maybe fireworks. Here's fireworks, so I'll show you what the scene looks like, right? Again, this is just an image I'm using for educational purposes for people who are watching this. So I'm not trying to steal it or use it or sell it, all right? Here it is, take a look. Here's my little beach scene. It's pretty small, right? I want this little beach scene to come on my form, but the problem is that my form is stuck inside my application. Now, in order for me to add images to my application, I have to add them as resources. Okay, a couple ways to do this. The easiest way, though, is if you go to Project, and if I go to Project Properties on the bottom, right here on the bottom, and if I pull up the project properties, on the left, there's a series of tabs. You want resources. And on the top, notice that there's something called strings. We don't want string resources. We want image resources. Okay, it gives me this little blank space here. What image resources does is it allows me to drag and drop any images into my application, just like this. And now I have an image that's part of my application resources. I cannot use an image unless it's part of my application resources, right? And it has a friendly name, beach scene, right? Hey, that's cool. I'm going to close this one down, and I'm going to go back to my Solution Explorer, right? So here's my Solution Explorer somewhere. And in my Solution Explorer, you can see that, I'm just actually going to dumb this down for a second. You can see that I have a new folder called Resources, and inside there I have something called Beach Scene. If I double click on this, it actually brings up a little editor, because Visual Studio 2015 and up has a little paint editor that you can use right inside here if you want to modify your images, right? This is my ugly little scene, but I want to put this scene, this beach scene right here in some kind of container. And we do have one. It's called a picture box. Let's search for that. So I'm going to go picture box and drag and drop the picture box. Another new control for you guys, right? I'll make the picture box fairly big. So something like this, right? And I want my beach scene to appear in here. Okay, now there's some options. If I go to my smart arrow, right, I can select my image, and I can select beach scene because it's part of my application resources. If I didn't put in my resources, it would not be available here. Okay, I could import though. I could click the import button. It would allow me to import other resources, and it would go inside the resources folder. So again, there's many ways to get images, but if it's not there, you can't select it. So I'm going to select them, press OK. Now guess what? It shows most of it, but what if it was really big? Well, I could have different modes of viewing. For example, I could choose stretch image, which is not exactly perfect. There's also auto size, which basically sizes my picture box to fit my image. And then there's center image, which doesn't do anything because of how small our image is, and zoom, which again looks like it doesn't do much. Later on, if you try these things again, you'll see that they do make a difference, right, to the images. For now, we're going to go back to auto size. That's the one I want. Here it is. And let's test this out and see how it looks. Yay, a little beach scene. Welcome to my awesome calculator, right? But that's kind of boring. In fact, I really don't like this picture box at all, right? In fact, wouldn't it be better if my entire form was the picture, right? So let's do that. So let's get rid of this. I just wanted to show you how to do a picture box. You might be required to do that on your assignment, right? And I want to make the form itself the image. So I'm going to go back to properties. And I'm not saying this is better, but you can do this, right? So if you go to background image, I can, again, as long as it's in my resource folder, I can choose the image. Right here it is, beach scene, and press OK. Now, man, what the heck? Look, it's all tiled. I don't want that. Well, underneath beach background image, there's a different way of applying it. And there's tile or center or stretch. And you know what? Normally I say no to stretch because it kind of does one of these. It stretches things. But this might be OK for this one for today. I'm going to leave it like this. My beach scene. Welcome to my awesome calculator. That's right. You're on the beach using a calculator. Yeah. I don't know why. But when you run this now, it looks like this, right? Here's my calculator. And then after 3 seconds, it goes to my calculator form. But there's a problem, isn't there? Does anyone detect the problem? What do you think the problem would be with the way I set up my calculator form? Think about what I did, right? When I created my calculator form, I went into my program, and I launched my SplashForm from here. But then, inside my SplashForm, it's creating my calculator form. It's almost like, and it is actually, my calculator form depends on my splash form to work. And this is bad. It's like I'm launching one form from inside of another form. And that creates a whole dependency chain, if you will, right? And I don't want to do that. It's almost like I want to have my forms there. I want to access them, turn them off and on when I need them, right? But I want them to happen outside of any other form. And of course, where does that happen? In program. So I need to refactor this thing a little bit, right? I want to instantiate an object of type calculator form here in my program. But guess what? My program is not public. So the first thing I need to do is I need to make this public as well as this. Those two things. And I want to instantiate it. Now, there's two places I could put it. I could put my object here, but if I did it here, it would be a local object to the main method, which doesn't make any sense, right? So I need to put it up here. So up here, I need to make a, create form objects. How about create reference to forms is up here, right? And I'll tell you why this is a problem here. So if I do this, if I say something like calculator form, and I call it calculator form. Oh, is this bad? Look how bad this is. And if I do something like this is equal to a new calculator form, can this work? Well, no, because this is a static class. So this will never be instantiated. And even if I put it down here, it'll just be local. So what I really want to do is something like this, public static calculator form. I want to make a static reference to a calculator form. So that means I can create a form without having to instantiate an object of the program class. Yay. All right, let's just modify this. So 0.3. So I'll say something like created an instance of the calculator form object, right? That's what I did. But, well, okay, cool. So I don't need to do that here. I mean, it's public. That's cool. That's cool. I like that, right? And then if I go to SplashForm, that means I can kind of take this away, yeah? Because now I don't have to do this anymore. I can just do, can't I just do calculator form.show? Well, no, because calculator form doesn't exist anymore, right? In order for me to get there, I have to do something like this, program.calculatorform.show. Because program is the explicit object, which is a static object, and calculator form is the actual object that I've created that's inside program, and the .show method is the one I want to use. Now, it's pretty ugly, I would say, right? And in fact, I want to go up here and say something like this. I refactored the SplashForm timer control, SplashForm timer handler. Okay, I refactored it so that I just call this program. I don't instantiate it here. I actually call it. But you're going to see that this causes an error. Let me show you. So again, a couple things here. One, in my program, in my driver class program, I created a public static variable, a reference variable called calculator form, lowercase c, right? I'm doing it here underneath my class. I can't do it in here in main because then it wouldn't be public, right? Because main itself is public static, right? So I got to do it out here. But this presents an issue for Windows Forms. When I run it, it does the splash screen, but it tries to get the splash screen, but there's a problem. And it comes up with this little error. And it says, set compatible text rendering default false. And why does it do this? Because I'm trying to enable visual styles after I've created an object of type form. And in Windows Forms, it does not allow you to do that, right? What do I mean by that? Well, if I go back to my program, this is something that you don't know about Windows Forms, right? These two lines here, application enable visual styles and set compatible text rendering default to false, these two lines got to have come before I instantiate an object of any form. So I can do part of this. That's why I put create reference to forms, but I instantiate new objects down below. What I really want to do is something like this, where calculator form is equal to a new calculator form here, but not here where I have my object, but actually after I do my initial set up my style. So I got to go in between here. It can come before these two lines. Okay. That makes sense? Maybe not, but that's how it works. So this I can declare an object here. This is just a reference to a container that can hold calculator form objects. But this is not a calculator form object. It's just a reference, right? Here is the new calculator form that I've created. This is where I instantiate a new object, right, of type calculator form. Actually, I'll just put this on a new line, the line before it, so that you can see it clearly. So you understand what this does, right? I can't do that up here. Now let's see if it works. So I'm going to run. And now it runs like before, right? No problem. With the added bonus that I'm not dependent on SplashForm, right, to instantiate my object. But here's the problem. Program, calculator form, show. Man, I don't like it. Program. Right? Wouldn't it be nice if we could just make it a nice simple name? And there is a way. First of all, I'm going to do a Team Explorer. We've changed all these things here, SplashForm and stuff. And the last thing I did here was I refactored the SplashForm tick handler. I didn't do a commit there. I'll do another commit there. But what I want to do here is I want to add a new property to the SplashForm, right? So let's do some stuff. Remember, forms are really interesting. Forms are classes, so I can do the same thing I normally do. I can say private instance variables, right? Just like before. I can say that here are my constructors. All forms have constructors. In fact, SplashForm itself is the constructor, right, for the SplashForm. So if I go // this is the main constructor. SplashForm. That's what this thing is, right? So there's my constructors. I can decorate it a little bit if I want to without going too crazy, right? Here's my, these just help me. So when I look over here in my on my toolbar, I can see what my sections are, right? Because it gives you some representation here. In my private instance variables, what I can do is I can declare an object of type calculator form, like this. I could say private calculator form underscore calculator form. It's just a reference. I'm not making a new object. I'm just creating a space for it, a reference. I'm putting some space aside, okay? I got my constructor. I can also do public properties, right? Public properties. We've done this before, guys. It's not new. I can do a new property, and my property is going to be of type calculator form, which I'm going to call calculator form with a capital. I can do this. Now, there's a problem with some of your assignments. Some people, for whatever reason, when they use the quick, this is called the quick declaration syntax for my properties, right? If you do this, is there any connection between this and this right now? Is there? No, right? I mean, these are two different things. This is one thing, and this is another thing. This quick syntax creates a getter and a setter and a space for this stuff, but it does not connect here. So some of you, for whatever reason, because you satisfy my requirements, was you made private instance variables, but you didn't connect them in any way to your properties. So you had both. Weird. Okay, but that's how it was. So I kind of commented on those, and you lost marks for that. So what I need to do here is I don't need a setter because this is a reference type. I don't need a setter, just like I didn't need it for the array list. Remember my little card list? I didn't need it. I just need a getter, a reference. And this time, instead of returning something that's here, calculator form like this, right? So I could do this, right, and return a reference to the calculator form and make it equal and all that stuff. Or I'm going to show you another quick way of doing it. I could do something like this: return program.calculator form. So this returns a reference to the calculator form, so I really don't need this at all. I'm not storing it. I'm just using it as an interface to connect. Sorry for the language. The interface to connect to the calculator form. So what am I doing? I'm creating a friendly name for calculator form where I don't have to use the name program. That's all I'm doing. An alias, right? So down here, where I have program.calculatorform.show, I don't have to do that anymore. I can say this. I can say this.calculatorform.show, right? Which is a lot more intuitive than program.calculator.show. Questions so far? So what we did, right, was we created a property, created a public property as an alias to program.calculator form. Right, 'cause it's too long. That's all we did. So it's basically just a reference. King floor, it all. All right, so that's really this. Let's try and see if it works. So boom, boom. So again, notice it's like 1, 2, 3 comes up, right? And now we're good. If I close it off, we're still good. Okay, before we stop for a break. So I've got this thing, happening, and some of you have asked in the past. So Tom, I want to know how to debug my code a little bit. Can you show us how to debug, right? And it's actually quite easy. So let's say, suppose my calculator is, before my calculator starts running, I want to start debugging my timer, right? Just my timer method. I can do that by, on the left, notice there's a gutter. There's a gutter here. There's line numbers here. I can click in the gutter, let's say next to a line, like number 49, or next to this line 50, click onto it. It creates a breakpoint, right? And what a breakpoint does is when the execution flow of the program gets to the breakpoint, number 50, line 50 here, it stops. It pauses right here. It breaks my code for a second, right? Now, why would I want to do this? Because if I want to check to see what's happening, right, I can actually look, I can zoom in on my calculator and get some information about it, all right? Let's try and run this thing. Now, I need to run this with debugging, okay? So I can't do a quick debugging. I just clicked on the gutter here, right, and press start. So what does this do is, so here's my calculator, and when it takes the third tick, it kind of brings me here. And now we're ready to debug. Okay, let's take a look. So what is this doing? Well, we have this thing called an autos window that comes up. Here's my autos window. And notice that it has an interval in here. So the sender object, which is part of my event handler, here's my sender object, has a value. And take a look, if I hover over it, in debug mode, it shows me the value that's stored inside of it, 3,000. That's what's stored inside of the sender, right? In fact, I can check any variable, right, to see what the value is, if it's a variable, right? So for example, if I have a variable up here, like I have this calculator form, it shows me what it is. If it has a value, it'll return a value, and it tells me the references and everything else right here in this little autos window. So any variable that I look at. Okay, cool. Well, I want to step through this slowly, and how do I do this? There's some controls up here that allow me to step through my debugging screen. So notice there's one that says show next statement. Another one that says step into. Another one that says step over, right? And then there's step out. Well, all these steps, if I try and show the next statement, it's going to try and go down here. But the problem is that it's trying to show my calculator form, right? Right now, it's just showing my splash screen. If I hover over it, you can actually see it's still there, but minimized. It's in the process. It's going through the application lifecycle and trying to go through to show the next part. So let's try and see if it works. Now, this will not work, but if I click this enough times, you can see that I'm trying to go to the next line. It's trying to go to the next line. What I really need to do is step into. It's going to give me a little warning that says, hey, are you sure? Yes. It's going to go to the next one. Now it says this hide. Uh-oh. Now I've got both forms. It's trying to hide this one and it's trying to show this one. But we're not quite ready to show yet. We're in the middle of showing. We're just about to show. Okay? That's what's happening. And let's step into again, right? All right, cool. My SplashForm timer enabled is false. So I'm stopping the SplashForm timer. I don't want it to continue. Look at the number of seconds so far in this diagnostic session. 3 seconds so far have elapsed. 3.172 seconds, right? Next, let's keep going. All right, 1 millisecond elapsed. Keep going. Okay, cool. Now my form comes up finally. So you see, I can control execution flow for my program so that I can stop it from executing so I can do some deep debugging to try and find out what's going on, right? Again, at this stage, I can go back and check to see what these values are, if it's enabled, if what the value is of some of these items, and so on. Not much to show here in our method, and we'll do more debugging later, but you can see that it pulls up my form quite nicely. All right, let's stop this. We can stop debugging. And for me to not debug this anymore, so if I was going to look at my SplashForm, until I take it away, the breakpoint is there. I can just click onto the breakpoint, and it's gone. And I can add as many breakpoints to my code as I want, right? So I can highlight the areas that I want to check, right, with a breakpoint. And sometimes you can't figure out what the problem is. It gives you a null reference exception. And you want to go through there and check to see what the problem is. And you can do that by adding a breakpoint to your code. Simple debugging. All right. I've gone through pretty good. We've created our SplashForm. I think it's a great place for us to stop for a break. Let's take 5 minutes, get some washroom break or whatever, and we'll come back with the next part, which is trying to make all those calculator buttons work. And here's what I want to do before we come back, right? When we come back, I want to make all the buttons work with one event handler. Hint, hint, it will be on your exam. All right, so stay tuned. Let's take a break.